The Underground Railroad. Believe it or not, the Underground Railroad was neither underground nor a railroad. That was just a code name for something much more spectacular than that. We can all agree that throughout history, humans have disagreed on one thing or another. In this case, we go back into the time of slavery. Because of slavery and the disagreements there were, we became a country divided, North and South. North was for slavery, South was opposed. And that is where the Underground Railroad comes in. The Underground Railroad was a network of hideouts for slaves to go when they were trying to escape slavery and get to somewhere safe. Now, because anything that had to do with slaves escaping had to be kept secret, many code names were given. Any person who assisted in helping slaves hide was called a conductor. For example, you may have heard of Harriet Tubman, a very famous conductor of the Underground Railroad who saved many lives and brought many people to freedom. Slaves would either be called cargo or passengers. Any hideouts, whether they be businesses or homes, were most likely called depots or stations. Also, hence the name Underground Railroad. Of course, it wasn't an underground railroad. Underground is referring to how everything was secret and no one would know. You could be standing right on top of it, but you wouldn't know there was something under you. Railroad is referring to them traveling, getting from place to place, from hideout to hideout. There were many factors that played into the creation of the Underground Railroad. A large portion of why the Underground Railroad was created was due to the fact that people were finally beginning to open their eyes in more vast amounts. They were finally realizing just how horrible slavery was and could sit around no longer. A majority of the conductors were either past slaves or slaves that had escaped. They, of course, were extra driven to help out as much as they could, knowing what a slave faced on a daily basis. The Underground Railroad was a monumental point in our history and had a huge deal to do with the abolishment of slavery. In these times, slaves were considered to be property of their owner, and they usually weren't treated any better than that of an animal. Understandably, most slaves dreamed about one day being free. The Underground Railroad gave a small glimpse of hope to those dreamers. However, getting to freedom was no easy travel. Slaves had to travel long distances to get where they were going, and usually in the shortest amount of time as possible. It wasn't uncommon that they had to face hard conditions with no food or protection, and in a lot of cases they had to fend off wild animals. Traveling with the family, which was also very common, made this task even harder. Making the decision of taking a chance to become a free citizen or getting caught and punished was a very hard decision for most. Keeping in mind that if a slave was caught, they were punished, and punishments were cruel. Escaping to freedom became more difficult when the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850 passed Congress. It penalized anyone who was helping slaves in the North, or any officers who did not arrest slaves that were thought to be escaped. This meant that now not only did slaves have to escape to the North, they had to escape all the way either to Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, Mexico, or Canada to be officially safe. It also put the safety of conductors' lives more in danger. Because it was so dangerous for everyone involved, drastic measures were taken. Sometimes babies or children were given opium to keep them quiet and from crying. It is believed that about 100,000 slaves traveled the Underground Railroad, but it is unsure how many of them actually made it safely to freedom. The Underground Railroad was part of a chain reaction and caused much change in U.S. history. One change being that it helped abolish slavery. Another is the fact that it was a motive for the Civil War. Because the North and the South disagreed on the matter of slavery, and the North took it into their hands to help free slaves, this created tension between the two.